Installing a new operating system on a computer is one of those skills that has been all but lost to time, like knowing how to drive a stick shift or knowing how to read an analog clock. You see, back in the 80s and the 90s, whenever you bought a new PC, you had to manually load and install your operating system, usually from several different floppy disks or CD-ROMs. But then around the release of Windows 3, that's when Microsoft had gained enough of the consumer PC market share that Windows actually came preloaded on newer computers, but then whenever a new version of Windows came out, you still had to manually upgrade your OS the old-fashioned way from external media like a Windows XP disk. And that process pretty much stayed the same until around the release of Windows 10, which you could generally upgrade to from a Windows 8 machine without using any external media. All you had to do was download the Microsoft Upgrade tool, and if your PC met the system requirements, it would do an in-place upgrade for you, and that's where the OS installing knowledge kind of fell out of the mainstream. But in the Linux world, it's rare for a consumer PC to come preloaded with any distro, let alone the one that you actually want to use. And so you would have to create your own bootable CD or flash drive, boot into it from your BIOS, and then you're off to the races with clicking through the setup screen to install your OS. But again, that process is so archaic to the average computer user that they would probably have to look up a guide for how to do it, and worst of all, they're still going to need that flash drive available to make the bootable media, which is becoming more of a rare commodity in this world of cloud storage and high-speed internet that's available everywhere. And even if you do have an old flash drive tucked away in a drawer somewhere, it's probably USB-A, which is less of a common port now on modern laptops. And so if you have to go out and buy a new flash drive just to install Linux, is that something that we can really call a free operating system? Well, luckily, there is a cheaper, more seamless path to digital freedom. It's called ULLI, the USB-less Linux installer, which, as the name implies, lets you install Linux without a USB flash drive or any other kind of external media. Now, before I start with this demo, I do want to point out that this software is still in alpha right now, and it's at least partially written with Claude, so bugs are to be expected. Use this with caution. Never install a new operating system unless you have all of your data backed up first. But anyway, I wanted to mostly draw attention to this program for the developer to get some more support for it, since this is free and open source software that I think will make Linux more accessible to people. So let's go ahead and dive right into the demo. Okay, so here I have a desktop with Windows 11 installed on it. This is a fresh install of Windows 11 on bare metal, and I'm recording this from a capture card so that you guys can see the full process of it. So from the developer's website, I'm going to go ahead and download for Windows. And so we get this zip file here, and let me extract that real quick. Okay, so I believe we just have to run this batch script here. And then it's going to request admin privileges. And it's not a true command line application. You can see it just launched the GUI here for us. So there's a few distributions that you can select from here, and it'll download and install these for you. But you can also use your own ISO file, which is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be loading CachyLinux, since that's one of the more popular distros these days. Probably what a lot of beginners are going to want to try using, especially since it's so compatible with gaming and doesn't require a lot of work to get that set up. So here we have the disk information, and I'm going to be basically wiping out Windows and installing it to the same disk that Windows is on. So we want it to make sure this checkbox is checked to automatically restart and configure UEFI boot. And we'll go ahead and start the installation process. Okay, and so here's where you can partition the disk. Now, one of the things with this is it doesn't completely wipe out the OS from just running this installer here. So you need to have enough space starting off to basically install Linux alongside Windows on the same disk. If you're doing that configuration, of course, you could just install it to a different disk. Look, I do have another 1 terabyte drive, but I actually have another Linux distro installed on there right now, so I'm not going to be wiping that out right now. So anyway, I think for now I'll just set it to like maybe 60 gigabytes. That's probably about the maximum it's going to let me do on this really small SSD. And yeah, so it says here it's going to shrink C for a little bit. And you've got all the information here to confirm what it's going to do. Now, one thing that's a little bit off, like this is a bug I noticed, is it's going to say Linux Mint here, even though I obviously selected CachyOS, but it will install the correct distro. That's just a, I guess, visual bug that needs to be fixed. Again, that's to be expected with a partially vibe-coded program that's still in alpha. So we'll confirm and proceed. And then we have the installation log here. So this is going to run for probably a couple minutes. Oh, you can also see the installation log over here. And then it has Linux Live, this partial, or I guess this temporary partition that it's creating. And it says it'll take 10 to 20 minutes. It hasn't taken that long in my experience with testing this, probably because I'm installing it to a solid state disk. All right, so it looks like the UEFI partition has been created, and yeah, okay, so it's all complete. And again, we have the message here that we're booting into Linux Mint 22.3, but we're actually going to be booting into CachyOS. So I'm just going to go ahead and let this countdown finish so that you guys can see that it reboots us into CachyOS successfully. Now it's going to be the CachyOS setup screen. So it hasn't really installed it. It basically is just going to restart us into that setup for CachyOS. But again, we were able to do this without using any flash drives or any other kind of external media. All right, so here we go. We'll boot into CachyOS. Also notice I didn't have to change the boot priority in my BIOS. It just took care of that for us. Very, very simple and straightforward. All right, so this is the typical boot process. Same thing you'd experience if you were loading CachyOS from a flash drive. All right, and it looks like our graphical user interface is starting up. And there we go, Plasma is starting up. All right, and there we are inside of CachyOS. So from here, you could go ahead and use the live like distro, try it out. Try before you install. That's one of the great things that Linux lets you do. But we're just going to go ahead and launch the installer to actually install CachyOS to this disk. And this is where it'll let us wipe out Windows. Like we can, manually partition the drive, and we can configure our encryption and all that good stuff. So we'll go next. All right time zone. And yeah, I'll just keep the default init system there. And want to make sure I select the right one. Okay, so this is the Evo 120. And choose the option to erase disk. Now you could install it alongside. You know, you could do that if you wanted to keep Windows, but just for the sake of this tutorial, I'm going to be wiping it out. And we can also encrypt our system. Put the passphrase in. All right, and we'll go next. And yeah, we're gonna keep Plasma Desktop. And then packages. This is one of the things I noticed too when testing this out, that I don't know why all these additional, well, not all of them, but most of these additional packages are just like extra desktop environments. And like, I don't know if that's something people would necessarily want in here, right? Like, I feel like if you choose KDE, you're probably not going to want GNOME Desktop and, you know, Cosmic and all this other stuff. You're probably going to want, or LXDE, you know, you're probably going to want like Brave or maybe LibreOffice and stuff like that. But whatever, you know, maybe that's something that the CachyOS devs will add in the future. It's also not too hard to just manually install that stuff. So we'll go ahead and set this up. And then choose a password. Okay. All right, and confirm everything that's here, and then we'll install it. And install now. So since I selected the full disk and chose to, you know, basically erase the disk and install CachyOS, this is going to wipe out Windows. But who needs Windows anyway? I mean, Linux is just so much more stable, more respecting to your freedom, and plus with CachyOS, gaming pretty much works right out of the box. You're going to get better gaming performance in most of the games that you would run in CachyOS versus Windows. So it's kind of a no-brainer at this point. And plus, as you saw, you don't even need to go out to the store and buy yourself a flash drive or, God forbid, a USB-C compatible flash drive. Usually those are a little bit more expensive than the old school USB-A. I mean, man, it's mind-blowing to even think that USB-A flash drives are old school now. Like, I remember when flash drives pretty much first came out. Like, I remember first getting one, I think back in middle school, and I was like, oh man, those are so cool. I don't have to save my homework to a CD or DVD-ROM, because that's what we had to do back in the day. You know, if you're working on something at school, I guess you could email it to yourself in some cases, but then again, email attachments, you only get like 2 megabytes worth of storage. So yeah, when those, I think my first one was maybe a 2 gigabyte flash drive, and I was like, oh man, this is so cool. You can store so much stuff on here. But yeah, you know, now it's like, don't even necessarily need to have a flash drive to install this stuff. And let me know if you guys are interested in this software here, if you want me to test it with some other distros, because a lot of the time when I do like distro demos or kind of, you know, testing them out and demoing them for a video, if I install them on bare metal, then obviously I just install it from a flash drive. So I was thinking I might try installing CubesOS this way. That's actually what's loaded on the 1 terabyte SSD. The other one that you guys saw is CubesOS, and I think it might be an outdated version of CubesOS. So yeah, I think that might be a good idea, is to try this with Cubes. And I would imagine if it works with Cubes, it probably will work with just about any Linux distribution, because Cubes is, you know, it's a little bit different than most other distros out there. Now, one other thing about this that I think would be a cool update to the ULLI package, the USB-less Linux installer, would be if the developer could somehow design the setup script to pass environment variables into like a char-rooted environment for Linux, like your username and password and stuff like that. I made a video like that years ago where I was installing Gentoo from, I think it was a Linux Mint live install, because if you never installed Gentoo before, you basically load, like when you download Gentoo and then put it onto a USB drive, it's not really like Gentoo, it's just I think they call it a stage 3. So it's like a very minimalist command line environment where you basically go through the steps to install Gentoo. But you can do that without actually downloading the Gentoo stage 3. Like you can just, like I said, or like I did in the video, do it from a live Linux Mint installation, and then that way you can look at the guide online and things like that to follow it. Here, I'm gonna go ahead and restart this while I keep running my mouth. So yeah, I think that'd be cool if you could pass your environment variables like your username, your password, root password, the option if you want to use Lux encryption, and then you could also maybe pass through the encryption key and then run a, like basically have the script install all of that stuff so that when you reboot, you don't just reboot into the CachyOS installer, you actually reboot into a fully installed CachyOS system. So that's just a little recommendation I'm going to throw out there. I don't even know if it's possible to do it from Windows, but yeah, that'd be pretty cool. So let me go ahead and put in the Lux encryption key or password just to show you guys that that process works as well. And boom, check out that boot time, you guys. Much faster than Windows, in case you needed another reason to use CachyOS or basically any Linux distro over Windows. So yeah, here we go. We're now loaded in, and show you that we have the full disk available to us here. Let me maximize Dolphin. So Windows is wiped out. CachyOS is installed, and we didn't even have to use a flash drive to do it. So Linux just got that much easier, you guys. Shout out to the developer who made this wonderful program. I hope that they can get some support, maybe a little bit of help, because it is free and open source software. So of course, if you are a good programmer, you know, if you're better than Claude, then you can hopefully push or do a pull request for some updates to this software to fix those little bugs like the, you know, installing Linux Mint thing when you're not actually installing Linux Mint. And again, if someone has the talent to sort of do that char-rooted environment thing I was talking about, where you could pass environment variables over to the distro that's going to be installed. That way you can configure your username, your password, encryption options, and all of that stuff within Windows. And that way, once the script is finished running, you just, bam, you just install or you boot right into your actually installed Linux distro. I think that would be super, super awesome and make this program like 100 times better. But anyway, that's it for this video, guys. If you enjoyed it, please like and share to hack the algorithm, and check out my online store, base.win, where you can buy my awesome merch or accessories for your phone or laptop. 10% store-wide discount when you pay with Monero XMR at checkout. Have a great rest of your day.